I fractured my C2 odontoid
Oh
process.
my
So I
gosh,
cracked the
Kev.
full odontoid off. I have the full hangman's fracture. So the odontoid shifted back and down and compressed my spine, but only severed a very small portion of it.
Wow.
So when I woke up, I didn't know that I had been
Wow.
unconscious. When I woke up and when I fell, I grabbed my neck and stabilized it because I knew I was hitting hard. So I think that's probably what saved my life.
Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of the Expect Miracles podcast. We have a very special guest today, Kevin Harvey. I met Kevin 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it had nothing to do with health or anything we were talking about today. At the end of our phone call, Kevin started telling me his story. And Kevin's story today is the reason why I created this podcast. He's been through a lot, and he went through something and he's made his life beautiful again. And it was such an inspiring story that I really wanted to have him on the podcast. And he was generous enough to devote his time, share his story, and all the amazing things he's doing now. So without further ado, please welcome Kevin Harvey.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I really appreciate you having me today.
Kev, thanks for coming on. Now, Kevin's business is student loan tutor. We had a conversation about how he was helping with student loans, and then we just got to talking after the conversation ended. And I was in awe of your story, Kev. It's such a beautiful story. I don't even know too much about it. That's why I'm excited to dive into it today. So, Kev, where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Michigan, just outside of Detroit, in the metropolitan area. I lived in Michigan the majority of my young life, went to college in Kalamazoo, Michigan, on the west side of the state. I've lived in quite a few places since then. I was in Colorado when I actually had the injury that really put us together beyond the student loans, where I started to share with you kind of how I evolved into the person I am today. I've been living in California for about the last 14 years or so now, 15 years, I guess.
So, Kev, let's jump into that. You had a life-altering injury that set you on the path you're on now. Some deep, deep downs. With some. I'm
Yeah.
sure very what goes down must come up. What goes up must come down. You have probably been on a valley of a journey these last several years. How long ago was the injury?
It was actually in 2005.
Wow.
So I'm nearing 20 years since the injury, and I'd say that I'm actually near the strongest point I've been since then.
Amazing. And Kev, what happened?
Well, I at the time was living and working in Summit County, Colorado, essentially the ski resort capital of Colorado, living in Breckenridge and working in the hospitality industry. I went snowboarding with a couple of friends and had one of the most incredible days at Copper Mountain
No
Ski
way. It
Resort.
was one of the best days of snowboarding ever, huh?
It was. It turned into the best day after that. I haven't been snowboarding since. I have been on the mountain. I made it out skiing a few years back, which was an
Wow.
amazing feeling. But yeah, I had one of the best days of my life. The top of the mountain in the bowls and armpit deep powder for most of the day through the forests and the trees. The terrain park was made for the gravity games at that time.
Mhm.
So my roommates and I really had no place there, but
Yeah.
went to check it out. And I ended up going over three jumps that were way outside
Just way
of
out of your
my
league at that point.
league, but I landed them all. And I got down the mountain and stopped the snowboard. A gentleman who had a number on his jacket asked me who I rode for and just kind of said, I ride for me. I was
Yeah.
so excited that I survived the jumps. My adrenaline was pumping.
Oh my
I
gosh.
I flew in the air so far that I had time enough to wonder when I was going to land. So I was at
Wow.
a point of elation that is rare to experience as a human. And then I ended up catching an edge on some ice on a cat track between two trails on the way down the mountain.
After the
I slept
jumps.
after all the jumps. Yeah,
No
very end of
way.
the day.
Who
Yep.
would have thought after the biggest jumps you'd ever been on, it was after coming down the mountain that did it?
On flat ground, nonetheless.
And so
Something that
you caught
people
an
do all.
edge, and what happened after that?
Yeah, I was notably going a little too fast on the
Hmm.
flat ground with the snowboard. My goal was to try to get going fast enough to not have to push off or
Right.
take a boot out and, kind of paddle along. So I noticed that it was getting really choppy, that it had thawed earlier in the day on the lower portion of the mountain, and we hadn't been down to the bottom of the mountain, so we hadn't realized. So I turned to my roommates behind me and pointed and said, "This is choppy, be careful." Just in time to turn back and see a big chunk of ice where someone had fallen earlier in the day. And I tried to pull the tip of the board over it, but it collided. I cartwheeled, my head punched through the ice on the mountain, and my body kept going.
Ah, so you like scorpioned? Like,
It was sideways, essentially,
ah.
like a full cartwheel, but with a head locked in the mountain while the body kept going down the mountain.
And did you know, was it the neck that broke?
It was. I fractured my C2 odontoid
Oh
process.
my
So I
gosh,
cracked the
Kev.
full odontoid off. I have the full hangman's fracture. So the odontoid shifted back and down and compressed my spine, but only severed a very small portion of it.
Wow.
So when I woke up, I didn't know that I had been
Wow.
unconscious. When I woke up when I fell, I grabbed my neck and stabilized it because I knew I was hitting hard. So I think that's probably what saved my life.
Wow.
When I came back to consciousness, my roommates were sitting over the top of me. One of them had tears running down his face, and
How long do you think you were out for?
he said a couple of minutes. Long enough that they were able to catch up with me. They were just a
Oh,
little bit behind me and surround me and weren't
that's when you
sure.
know it's bad when somebody's standing over you and they're crying. Oh my God.
They thought I was dead. I still had sensation and mobility. So I didn't know that I had
Oh
broken my
man.
neck. And
Wow.
I went to sit up and realized really quickly that something was wrong. But at that point, my adrenaline and the shock was setting in really quickly. So I was convinced that I just hurt myself, maybe pulled a muscle or something like that, or jammed it a little bit. And I attempted to snowboard down and was not able
Whoa.
to. I ended up basically scooting on my butt down the last 100 yards of the mountain because my shock was in a place where I didn't even really consider getting help beyond. I stumbled to the truck. I didn't get an ambulance ride. My roommates carried my snowboard, and I held my neck at that point in basically full traction with my hands. Managed to get in the car and to the hospital. The initial emergency room visit, they misdiagnosed it as a muscle injury.
Oh my
But
God.
at that point, as the shock had settled, I realized trying to fill out the forms in the ER that I couldn't take a second hand off the neck and that my head felt like it wasn't very connected. So I let them know that there was something very wrong and that I could tell it was not just a muscle injury. So they did a CAT scan where they found the full odontoid fracture, strapped me in a neck brace for a couple hour ambulance ride down to Denver.
Intensive care.
Yeah, I spent about 4 days in cardiac ICU. I can feel there's a little tremble in my voice going back to this
Hmm.
time, even 20 years ago. Such an impactful moment in my life. 4 days in the ICU, primarily on ice chips, with consultations with six of the leading spine surgeons in the United States. None of them could figure out how I survived with the full odontoid fracture. They said that with my injury and the degree of it, that there was a 99.9% chance I should be dead and a 0.01% chance or a 0.1% chance rather that I would be a quadriplegic at best steering a wheelchair with my chin or my tongue.
Oh my God.
That was when the sobering reality kind of set in. No one would operate on me because they said there was no way I would come out still with the mobility and sensation that they couldn't figure out why I still had. So they strapped me in a neck brace and told me not to move for a year
Wow.
and sent me home. So
What?
began one of the darkest periods of time that I've really ever had in my life.
Oh my gosh, Kev, 1 year bedridden.
Yep.
Now,
Yep. 6 months in, analyzed the break and told me I needed a couple more months, at least part time in the neck brace. It was about 9 the first time that I was able to take the neck brace off, which I had been through quite a wild period of challenge and darkness in that moment. But the first time I took the neck brace off, my mind, I expected that I'd pop it off, and here I was back to normal adult life. But I popped it off to fully atrophied muscles, and it felt as if my head couldn't
could
hold
barely
itself
hold your
up.
head up. Now, what was your sensations like in your arms and limbs at this point?
Starting with the break, the reason that I knew it was broken when I first was attempting to kind of come fully back to consciousness and figure out what to do next, I went to move and kind of stretch my neck. And then again at the bottom of the mountain was the major realization while I was trying to determine what to do next. I went to shift my neck and I felt I lost sensation of my left leg, and I felt a shooting pain, almost like being shocked electrically, that went from my neck to essentially my bowels. And I felt as if I was losing sensation of my bowels at that moment. And it shit, sent the panic in my mind like something is very, very wrong. The year of primary bedridden, don't move, even breathing felt like a serrated knife blade just being wiggled on my spinal nerves. A cough or a sneeze felt as if I could put myself into full paralysis, and sometimes, like one sneeze would put me in a place where it felt as if I jumped into a pool of lava. Like I had different sensations where one part of my body could be numb, another part might feel like it's frozen, another part might feel like it's on fire, and like I can't get my hand off a hot skillet or something like that. And then through the process of trying to learn to move again, every sensation from breathing to even a heartbeat, sometimes just laying in my bed, the sensation of the heart beating is enough of a vibration to put pressure on those nerves. I have a permanently crushed spinal cord, which turned into the greatest blessing I never could have imagined for myself.
Kev, I just want to ask you one question. How old are you at this point?
I'm 44.
I'm sorry, when the injury happened?
Oh, when I broke my neck, I was 25.
Now, what was your mental state like? You're young, in the prime of your life, you're bedridden for a year. I mean, I told you I had a TBI and I had full function of my body, and there were many nights where I just cried myself to sleep,
Yeah.
thought my world was over, and didn't have anywhere near the pain levels you were having. And I'm sure in that time, you find out who your real friends are, your loved ones are, because there's people that
Yeah.
come and go. What was your mental state like? Like even like 3 months after, 6 months after,
Yeah.
you have all you do is you're laying on your back staring at the ceiling. What are your thoughts?
It was definitely a really challenging time. Going from, a somewhat fresh college graduate and had previously owned a business to now I had zero income, bills mounting. I had a fiance at the time, which I couldn't show up as a partner for whatsoever. She was incredible and supportive to me, but a human can only take so much, and that eventually came to an end. My roommates were very helpful for me, but even with people being kind and supportive, I felt worthless. I felt broken. The amount of pain that I experienced on numerous occasions, I questioned whether or not it would ever go away and whether or not it was worth it trying to stay alive. I had moments where I convinced myself that I shouldn't have survived and that the pain that I was experiencing, if I just allowed it to take over, that I wouldn't wake up from it. And I actually I got dark enough to the point where I really believed that. And I, it sounds strange to say, but I feel like I didn't have the courage to
Mm-hmm.
like take my own life. But I
Mm-hmm.
was fully convinced in my darkest moment that if I just went into the pain, that I would disappear in it and wouldn't come back, that I should have died, but I was fighting it too much. And I put a nice shirt on and laid down on the couch as best I could. This was probably about 6 months in when I was trying to figure out how to move a little bit in between. And I laid down and I went into the pain, and I was determined that that was it. That was my ending. And I began to meditate into the pain. And I ended up having an epiphany that I'll never forget. While traveling into the pain, I saw myself through an outsider's perspective and how I was showing up, how I was living my life. And I realized that I didn't want to show up for the world that way anymore. I wasn't a bad person or anything, but our culture kind of has a culture of recrimination. We tend to pick on each other a lot. You know, we put each other down. It's the common sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
I like to tease like everybody loves Raymond syndrome. If you've ever
Right.
seen that television show, the
Mm.
family just tears each other apart all the
Yeah.
time. That's the sense of comedy. So I realized that that's kind of what I was used to, and that it didn't cause any good for people. And that anytime I've showed up in that space where you put someone down and take energy from someone else, that although you may feel like you get a boost of energy, that you're actually pulling down the energy of everyone around you by hurting people, even if it's out of like a joke, something silly. I also realized that to be alive despite the pain, to have an opportunity. I'm getting a little bit choked up because this was a really big awakening for me, to have an opportunity to show up and do better and be kinder to people and help people to see the positive impact that we could make would be worth the pain that I was experiencing every day. And I came out of the meditation in tears of joy, still in so much pain I couldn't get off the couch, but realizing that anything that I could do to make someone else's life better after feeling that way was going to be how I wanted to dedicate myself to moving forward. And that if I could ever function again, that I would try to live in the way of the awakening and kindness and
Mm-hmm.
love and compassion, and in really trying to go deeper to help people when they need it. Because when we're in those spaces of darkness, even simple gestures can lift us up a little bit and shine a little bit of light into that darkness that we find ourselves stuck in.
Kev, you've mentioned on a couple occasions this has been the biggest blessing that has ever happened to you in your entire life. What
Yeah.
do you mean by that? I'm sure there's people listening like, how is that even possible?
I've leveled with myself on this a bit because in the beginning, when I realized that I fully believe it, like it was the awakening that changed me from I should be dead to I fully believe this is the greatest blessing. And I mean, I sit here now with a permanently crushed spine. I'm fully mobile. I've regained my strength. I've managed to even do construction again for many years. And in that awakening, realizing that if I never experienced that life changing hard stop to the course that I was on, that I don't really know what the outcome would have been. And the awakening to realize that the energy of the universe works so much differently than we imagine it to, and our power to affect the outcome of things with our mind, with our actions, and with the way that we show up, not just for ourselves, but for others as well, and for ourselves. So to really feel like something that causes you pain all the time is a blessing means to realize that that pain is a reminder of the challenges we go through, but that I'm not defined by those challenges. I'm defined by how I move through them. I'm defined by when I see someone else suffering, how I can show up to help them get to a place, even if I can't take away the physical suffering, to help them to feel like they're not alone and to be able to. I loved the term shine the light into the darkness, because for me, that's what it feels like. But to bring some sense of joy or understanding or compassion in a world where a lot of us who've been to these places and experienced, whether it's an injury or a change in life circumstance, it can take us to these spaces where we feel like we lose all of our worth, right? Not
Yeah.
just outside of ourselves and society. I couldn't show up, I couldn't work, I couldn't pay rent. Like, I felt worthless in that respect, but I also felt worthless to myself. I didn't really feel like I ever had anything to offer again, or like there was an option that I could recover it. And having that epiphany and awakening, it was a bit of a roller coaster for a while. I was still really deep in my recovery process. But it showed me the power of meditation and of focus. And I started spending more and more time going into the pain of the injury. And it does not feel good. As humans, we tend, when something is damaged or injured, we will pull all of our energy and attention away from that space, because the more we tend to focus, the more that we can feel it, whether we're conscious or not. So going into those meditations sometimes would increase the amount of pain I felt like I was in, until I got into the space where I realized what I was feeling was my neurological system trying to regrow, and the feeling of nerves trying to reconnect and figure out how to send signals effectively while they're crushed, and getting those roads to open in between, and reframing in my mind that that was pain that was leading me to death, and realizing that the pain of that was me regrowing and essentially kind of rebirthing as a person, rebuilding my ability to function as a human and to learn to trust. And then diving deeper over time, it's been a 20-year process. I've had the blessing of finding Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I'm a huge,
That's so
huge
funny
fan.
you say that. I was literally 2 minutes ago thinking this sounds a lot like Joe Dispenza's work.
Yeah, and once I heard him, it was like such a relief, feeling like I'm not alone, and like maybe I'm not crazy a little bit, because I started to really believe in my ability to focus on my own healing and to take that time to envision the nerves reconnecting and envision myself having a better life, and believing and seeing that even though I may be in excruciating pain, that that isn't the end of it, that there's more to it. And I spent a lot of time focusing my energy on regrowing and on showing up and on rewiring my mind, right? Instead of like, oh, this pain hurts so much, and going back into the darkness of the reminders of unworthiness, or, feeling as if you can't show up or contribute to the world, and reminding myself, I'm so grateful that I get to experience this pain while I was learning to walk functionally again, and while I was learning to use my upper body. And when I started being able to do some rock climbing and bouldering and build up my upper body strength, I could barely even like hold myself up in the beginning. And then I got to the point where I could pull myself a little, and like celebrating all those little micro miracles. And I love the name of your podcast, because if I hope for miracles, I'm leaving the space open to not believe that it's going to come to me. But when I expect that the universe as a whole energetically is conspiring for my benefit, everything energetically and on a quantum level is designed to flourish and to succeed in nature, as is my body, as is my mind, as is my spirit. And when I bring those all together under that belief, the amount of gratitude that anchors me in my vision becomes what my physiological system, like mentally, I can think of what I'm grateful for, and it changes the chemical compounds that my body releases, which puts me in a physical state of gratitude. And when I can live from that space, even in the midst of any sort of chaos in life circumstances, when I hold the gratitude for what is possible and believe in what is possible and the beauty of it, my brain begins to really believe and know and expect that whatever is next is going to continue to meet me with the light that I bring to the world.
It's amazing, Kev. And one of the things I love about your story is it doesn't end with your recovery. It doesn't end with you. You are now and many years been helping a lot of other people financially and spiritually and healing in a healing way. What are you doing now, Kev, and how are you helping people these days?
So I do a lot of different things. I've also really found that living for the benefit of myself also doesn't really lift me up or bring me the amount of joy that I receive in life while I'm helping others. So I've always tried to dedicate my life to helping in one way or another. And as life changes and gets busier and marriages and kids and all those things, it becomes a bit of a roller coaster that we have to be attentive to. I am a secretary and a board member of Heart Space Sanctuary with my current partner. That is a 508c1a ministry that we believe and respect and love anything that anyone believes spiritually or as far as religion is concerned. But we believe in showing up with our hearts to help make the world a brighter, better place for others. So that's something that I'm working on, supporting the growth and the launch of. My primary thing that I'm doing now is with student loans, how we met. Part of the process that I don't always touch on very often is that I had graduated about a year and a half before I broke my neck. So when I was injured, I was in the early stages of trying to knock all of my student loans out of the park. When I was not able to pay them, I watched them explode. The total cost of what I owed ended up so much higher than what I had originally borrowed. While I was in recovery, they were contacting me repeatedly, threatening to even garnish wages that I didn't know if I'd ever have. And it was very painful. And it felt almost like having my nose rubbed in my own mistake of crashing on a snowboard, that own freak accident.
Which was the last thing you needed at the time, too.
Exactly. And I wanted to pay these things. I didn't really understand how student loans work. I was just, I thought that was all I had as far as options. So at some point, I realized that I couldn't rely on what they were telling me and that I needed to dive in and learn more about how to protect myself and my student loans during the recovery process. I eventually found that because I was temporarily disabled, that I could stop my payments while that was happening. And then over the course of the last 20 years, essentially, I had to manage and figure out how to keep my loans in a space where I wasn't going to be at detriment from the injury, especially having to pay 2 to 3 times what I had originally borrowed, watching them grow over my recovery. So I really dove deep. I learned how the government subsidized education system works. There's income-driven repayment plans that completely break the mold for how student loans work. And over time, without having any idea, I became a really, really high level, so to speak, expert in student loans. Just my own self-driven expert managing my own loans. Fast forward to just about 3 years ago or so, I was celebrating a divorce with my first vacation to Hawaii. And this was a really pinnacle achievement for me because it's something I had always wanted to do, that after I broke my neck, any of those big dreams became really back burner. Like daydreams. They felt like they were less possible. So being able to go to the island for the first time was so special for me. I had a super powerful experience visiting the island. I ended up taking my children back a couple of months later so that I could share what I experienced with them. I always love to give back. So the first time I went to Hawaii, I bought a bunch of sandwiches and gave it to some homeless people in Kona on the Big Island. When I took my kids, I heard about a volunteer day on a farm. And so I went to this organic farm. We were volunteering. They had a farm to table meal. At the end of the volunteer day, I was still looking for the owner. I hadn't met him yet. Some folks who lived there pointed him out to me. He was further down the property planting trees. So I went to go help him plant trees instead of going for a hike to see the rest of the land. And that turned out to be the owner of Student Loan Tutor, who I am now working with. We became fast friends, talking about helping people and how that becomes such a passion, and organic farming and all these other things that I'm really inspired by and passionate about. So after knowing each other for a while, when all student loans came back online after COVID, he called and said, "Kevin, we're getting really busy. There's so many people who have student loans who need help. We need someone with a huge heart who loves to help people all the time." My first response was, I don't think I can do that. I have 19 years of battling my own student loans and way too much trauma. If I never had to deal with mine again, I wouldn't. And he's like, "Well, you should talk to us because maybe you don't have to." So I finally came and I sat down with some of the managers here and realized that they were doing essentially what I'd been doing for myself for the last nearly 20 years, managing my own student loans. I came on as a client. I hired them so that I'd never had to call the Department of Ed or the loan servicers, because we are a full service company. We take care of everything for folks.
And that's a small sucking activity.
Yeah, indeed. Student loans are really challenging, and there are so many benefits available out there, but it's really, really hard to get accurate information about that system. And since coming on board with Student Loan Tutor, I've studied under 5 of the best student loan experts in the United States. So the company can really meet people with a CPA level of knowledge for the Department of Education's kind of confusing student loan system. The job satisfaction that I'm receiving with Student Loan Tutor is through the roof. All I do all day is help people save money in a space where I felt tortured for so long. So realizing the value of what I have to offer there, and that I can completely change people's lives once they understand how to maneuver within the system and really reap the benefits of that system that's designed to help people, but in a really confusing package.
Yeah. And Kev, I think towards the end of our call the other day, do you offer some personal one-on-one healing as well? Or
I do, yeah. I am a Reiki master healer and teacher now. That came after many, many years of doing my own healing. My partner now is another person that I met actually on the Big Island of Hawaii, having those super powerful soul expanding experiences. And she's a Reiki master teacher with Blossoming Lotus Reiki. So I ended up studying under her through the time we were friends and connecting. And yeah, I love to offer healing sessions, learning how to be able to work with the energetic flow of the universe. We all operate on electricity, to put it in the simplest terms possible, and it's in everything from the chairs we're sitting on to the lights behind you, and in our bodies. We create about 3.5 volts of electricity. It's about equivalent to a AA battery is what it takes for us to function as a human. And with Reiki healing and energy, it's very similar to the concepts from Dr. Dispenza, where believing in your intention and the flow of energy, you can feel it alter the way that energy moves, and being able to open that channel up for other people, whether it be physical healing, similar to what we've experienced, or even emotional or mental healing. I love to tell people it's essentially flowing gratitude through your body and helping the cells and your atoms on a quantum level to start to vibrate at a frequency in more alignment with each other and more conducive to healing, regrowing everything, including nerve tissue, which takes longer than a lot of other tissue, but it's amazing what our bodies have the capacity to do, especially when we call on them to do it and when we expect the miracles. They magnetize toward us.
Absolutely. I can almost tell with the patients that walk into my office who's going to do really good and who is I mean, obviously people can be skeptical about any type of healing, but I have an expect miracle sign above my door, and I have people
Yeah.
that come in, they say, I'm here, I'm ready to get better, I'm expecting a miracle. And then I have other people that sit down and they say, listen, I'm not expecting a miracle here or anything. I don't even know if this is going to work or not. And the people that are primed and ready to heal so much faster, and the mental state has a huge part to do with the healing that you were talking about before.
Yeah, definitely. For me, an example that came to mind when you were saying that, my best case prognosis from the 6 neurosurgeons was 50% mobility without the surgery. That was their best case
Wow.
scenario. With the surgery, they told me most likely less than that because the act of trying to realign the vertebrae that was cracked in half around the crushed spinal cord would likely reduce my mobility even further. Believing that magnetized that outcome toward me.
Yeah.
At that 6-month point, when I essentially tried to allow the injury to take me away, the pain to take me away, I really believed that there wasn't a chance for me to really get better. And in that state of mind, our body believes us too. The cells believe us, the nerves believe us, and our heart. And when we're stuck in that state of desperation and really believing that this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, we won't be able to step into other opportunities because my mind will always see what's happening through the lens of this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
Very true.
When my mind shifted to the gratitude and the expectation of healing, right? You no longer see it through the lens of this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. You start to see what's the potential in this? What are the possibilities? And the excitement from that starts to feel like Christmas morning. The moment you have that first thought, well, what are the possibilities? Is a miracle really a possibility here? Absolutely. They happen every day all over the world. I'm a 20-year walking miracle. 98% of my mobility I've recovered from a best case 50% scenario. I
Unbelievable.
could
Yeah.
even on a good day touch my chin to my shoulder.
Wow.
Can't quite do it on the left side today, but on the right side I've got it.
Amazing, Kev. And Kev, at the end of all my episodes, I like to ask the guests, what is one piece of advice that has really resonated with you over the years that you would like to gift the audience? Could be absolutely anything.
I would say one of the what's coming to mind is more of a tool than advice. One of the most powerful tools that has become that primary thing anytime I feel like I need it. When I open the toolbox, it's the first thing I go to, is a gratitude meditation. So sitting down, taking a deep breath, no matter how dark of a space that you are in. And I have had other situations, including my divorce, where this came back to me because you start to forget. And when you have dark times, dark moments, big changes, you can get that tunnel vision or put on a different pair of lenses again. Oh, this is so horrible. So in that space of darkness, if you can sit with yourself and take a deep breath and think of something that you're grateful for. The last time, and I mentioned the post-divorce as I was recovering from a major shift in my marriage, I found myself again in a dark space. And when I tried to think of something I was grateful for, in the beginning, the only thing I could think of was a delicious lunch I had about a week before that I remembered to taste one bite of. And I was grasping and reaching for that one. And when I sat and went, wow, that was actually really good, I'm glad I took the moment to taste that and remember I was eating it instead of just throwing it down, right? And when I had that thought and realized I really feel it, I'm glad I had that. I had a moment where I sort of almost felt alive for a second, and it might have only lasted for 1 or 2 bites, and then I went back to wherever my mind was at the time. But having that thought, sitting with myself in meditation, I could feel the gratitude. I could feel my brain releasing the chemical of gratitude. And as it swirls through your body, it usually lasts, the average from what I've studied is about 90 seconds for those emotional chemicals, so to speak, whether it be anger, whether it be lust, whether it be gratitude, whether it be self-loathing. When you secrete that chemical, you've got about 90 seconds of it flowing through your bloodstream. So in the beginning of the gratitude meditation, I could only think of the one thing, but I felt the gratitude flow through and then flowed back into my other recurring negative thoughts. By about 3 or 4 days of doing this meditation a few times a day, when I felt like I was getting lost in those more dark feelings and energies, I started to think of other things. And it was about day 4 or 5 when I sat down in a meditation and I thought, man, I still am grateful for that burger I had a week and a half ago. I should probably go eat another one of those and try to pay closer attention and do that again. And I could feel the gratitude flowing. And I thought, I'm so grateful that I stood in the shower an extra minute and just felt the water flow over me. That actually felt like a good release. I'll have to do that again. And that added more gratitude. And I could feel that come through. And then I had the thought, I'm so glad that I got to see my boys a couple of extra days this week. I'm so glad that's the most important thing to me. And without consciously thinking it, my mind, with now gratitude flowing through me, these 3 different ideas, I could feel it almost hit the brain as the cycle of chemicals returns with your blood flow. And it had released, the second thought of gratitude. After the third one, I felt it release more and it hit my brain. And I went, I'm so grateful that I had this horrible experience with my ex-wife, because it's such a good reminder how powerful this gratitude meditation is. And I melted into tears of joy and laughter. That feeling of realizing, because the brain, once my logical brain tried to catch that thought, it was too late. I really believed it. In that moment, it didn't come from my logical brain. It's too stubborn to want to believe that.
Right.
But the reality was, I realized my heart really believed that by feeling that gratitude, that it woke me back up to the power of myself to be able to change my circumstances. And no matter how dark I've gone at any point in life, or in the more challenging days, or certain times where I do wake up without as much mobility, if I can return to that tool of gratitude, it has the capacity to shift me from believing my circumstances define me to believing that every breath is a miracle, and anything that happens beyond that is all going to be brighter and better as long as I show up with that gratitude and with that kindness and meet the world in the energy that I want to be met.
Amazing. I love that, Kev. Kev, this has been one of my favorite episodes. I said it in the beginning of the podcast. You are the reason why this podcast exists. Thank you so much for sharing your story and laying all the cards out on the table and not holding anything back. Kev, where can people find you online if they want to, whether it's student loan tutor, whether it's personal, where can people find you?
Yeah. So I've got a couple different emails. If you have student loans and you're looking for some information or advice, feel free to email me at Kevin, Kevin, at studentloantutor.com. If you're looking for information about healing, about growth, about gratitude, and what's possible there, my company behind the scenes is called Conscious Coast. And the reason I chose that name is my goal is to help people to consciously choose their path in life. And that when we get to the point where we are consciously creating the miracle of life through us and forward, and we're pulling ourselves in and magnetizing them, that it'll feel like we're coasting through life, right? We don't want this to be hard, like we've got to push the gas or like we have to work for it. We want to consciously feel like it's that ease. So you can find me there at conscious.coast.info@gmail.com. And I'm always happy to help. You can also find Heart Space Sanctuary at heartspacesanctuary.love. And then Blossoming Lotus Reiki puts you in touch if you're looking for energy healing or any information. Illuminea, my partner who runs Blossoming Lotus Reiki, has shifted into a sliding scale system. So if you need help, she's always going to find a way to help you. And I'm always right with her and behind her. If you want to work with her, with me, whomever, we're here. And we've got a whole network of people who can support you emotionally, physically, mentally, or financially as well. And if you've got other financial questions, feel free to reach out to the student loan tutor, and I'll put you in touch with experts who can help you turn your debt into savings and pleasures and joy for yourself moving forward.
Yep. And I can attest to that one. Kev, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really love this episode and would love to have you back on anytime.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Such a pleasure. Thanks for doing what you do and bringing this concept into the mainstream. It has the potential to completely change the world if we realize the power of our own belief to affect not just ourselves, but the people around us. And the more that we show up and give to each other, you know, how bright does life look? So thank you for doing what you do. This means a lot to me, and to find you and connect coincidentally, so to speak, right? Or
Exactly. Yep.
synchronistically.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm really grateful to connect. So thanks again.
Me too, Kev. Thank you so much.